Bias is built on or around a claim. That claim can and will evolve over time, and that claim is what drives the bias. That's why it's so important to recognize bias in ourselves and in others. When we as individuals are making better decisions, then we as a society can aspire to grow from the fruit of those decisions. We also need to recognize and utilize the tools and techniques that are available to us to empower objectivity and to minimize the hold that biases have on us. Let's look at a few examples of claims that are tied to specific biases. These are claims that are prevalent to 21st century society. The Holocaust never existed. The Earth is flat. COVID-19 is a hoax. The claims are clear, direct, and exact in their view. However, there's plenty of data, widespread and accepted, that contradict the claim. There's scientific evidence and human memories that dispute the claim. But there are people that will jump through hoops, leveraging partial truths and outright lies to defend that claim, to defend and reinforce that bias. People often try to conflate opinions and bias as being the same, but they are different. An opinion is just the subjective interpreting of information. It's how we feel about a subject, any subject, big or small. Even when we objectively evaluate and assess and form a conclusion, that conclusion is essentially our opinion. We use our opinions in debates and discussion as the focus of our talking points. We also use these opinions to shape our self-view and our worldview. At that scale, opinions play a role in shaping our reality. Socially, this is happening all around us. People that are more opinionated are people that are more set in their ways. But what does set in their ways really mean? Opinions as a whole are neutral. They are neither positively nor negatively charged. It depends on what the specific opinion is before we could ever evaluate its morality, its usefulness, its worth, or its value. On the other hand, bias is always negatively charged because it's always an obstacle to objectivity. As an obstacle to an objective mindset, bias can take different forms and manifest itself in different ways. Bias is about being stuck in your point of view, even when contradictory evidence that's credible and factually or scientifically proven is presented. There's not just one type of bias either. Bias and bias recognition have been studied for decades, and from that research, specific types of biases have been identified and studied. For example, bias can be ego-driven, where someone believes that only they have the insight, expertise, or information to make the best evaluation or assessment. There's also a type of bias where information deemed negative is ignored, and the search for more information is stopped, so that any contradictory evidence to the bias's claim is not discovered. In the corporate world, there's a term referred to as groupthink, where innovation and the galvanization of teams can be lost. This is a type of bias that can occur where people tend to jump on the bandwagon and follow along with decisions being made by others, even when they see the flaws tied to those decisions. Biases are obstacles to objectivity. They are like a psychological blind spot that produces irrational or delusional behavior. Let's look at two different scenarios that demonstrate bias. See how the impact of each in terms of people and society is different. In the first scenario, we have a group of 50 million people who believe that the Earth is the center of the universe instead of orbiting the sun. Defiant to scientific evidence and images captured from space, they stand firm that the Earth is the center of the universe. First of all, just because 50 people or 50 million people believe that the Earth is the center of the universe, that doesn't change the science. So, in this scenario, there's a massive group of people waking up and living their lives, believing that the Earth is the center of the universe. Bias drives behavior, so this group of 50 million, they don't just think that the Earth is the center of the universe. They falsely construct a reality in which that belief is shared amongst all of them as truth. They live as if the universe exists, as they see it, not as science sees it. In the second scenario, we have the same group of 50 million people, except this time they all share beliefs that all of the citizens from a specific country are lazy or intelligent, that they are sensual or cold-hearted, that they are innovators or copy artists. Whatever it is, and it doesn't always have to be a negative label, these 50 million people believe the stereotypes. And those stereotypes are the types of bias that show just how much some settle for labeling a person instead of just allowing that person to share themselves. Many people do the same thing with astrology. You're a Virgo? Then that must mean that you are this list of 8 or 10 personality traits. Then, if you meet the criteria of one of those labels, you're immediately placed into that metaphorical bucket. In that kind of environment, once you've been placed into one of those buckets, imagine the difficulty in trying to communicate with someone who believes that they already know you when they actually barely do. Imagine trying to work with someone who always assumes their own interpretation of your questions instead of your words themselves. People who act like they already know what you like or dislike and what your opinions are on a subject without even taking the time or effort to ask. Does that sound like the kind of person that you'd enjoy collaborating with on a work-related project? Or the kind of person that you'd want to hang out with or develop a deep relationship with? Those are the types of things that are at stake when we talk about settling for bias.